Hi, this is Avantika from the McKelvey Group. Welcome to the next episode of our guest speaker series. I have here in the office with me Amber Hart from AOC Key Solutions. She is an accomplished proposal expert, and I've had the pleasure of working with her in the past several times, and I highly recommend her. She's also great at writing articles, great insightful topics that she brings to the industry, and I think it would be very valuable for our collective industry clients to hear some of her best practices and approaches that she sees in the proposal world. So with that, Amber, I welcome you to the podcast.
That was very nice of you to say.
And please tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Well, my name's Amber Hart, obviously. I work with and for AOC Key Solutions that's been around for over 30 years doing proposal consulting, management, business development, strategy, and slowly but surely making our way more into the thought leadership realm as proposal management kind of is transforming, and procurement every day is kind of, you don't know what you're going to get anymore. And for them, I kind of do whatever they need me to do. I consider myself kind of your professional utility belt. I do strategy, capture, proposal management, which is, a daily need and daily thing, content writing. And then lately I've kind of been exploring a little bit more into thought leadership and writing and more op-eds and exploring those topics. So.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, from your perspective, you see so many different acquisitions and proposal types. Tell us something that you've done recently that's interesting.
The cool thing about proposal management, it's not a sexy title at all. It's not something you grew up wanting to do. But the cool thing about it is you work with every different size company, every different makeup of every company. And then you get to leave if it goes wrong, which is really great. But, as far as topics goes, let's see, in the past year, I did the major GWAC. So I did Alliant, I did VETS 2, I did COSP3 small business, and then I did the Alliant large one, and then I worked on some Oasis stuff. I worked on a really cool one for USACE for Walla Walla for a client, and that was something I've never worked on before. It was a SF330 template, which for everyone out there means they don't do pricing, basically. They give you more of a structure. I really liked it because they give you instructions, but then they let you run with it free. So it was pretty cool. The client ended up winning, which was really awesome. Right. Just found that out a few days ago. And then just a few weeks ago, I worked on the CCN healthcare bid. I've worked on white papers for telecommunications. I mean, the past year has been crazy, and I've worked on almost anything. I worked on an embassy proposal for logistics and transportation and for waste disposal.
Wow.
Learned a lot about waste disposals and embassies. That was pretty cool.
Very unusual in our industry, right?
Yeah. So that,
but there's a need for everything.
There's a need for everything, literally for everything.
Yeah. And you mentioned briefly that you don't generally see clear instructions on SF33s or pricing, and that brings me to our conversation where you and I work together a lot, where you're leading the entire proposal. I mean, it's on your head. You're running all these volumes, because you're in charge of everything. But what in your experience happens when you don't have an integrated pricing approach, and how do you work through that?
That's probably been the biggest gap there's been to fill, I would say, as starting as a proposal consultant. So for those who haven't been following my career out there, I started as internal into different corporations. So for large smalls, where I worked directly with them. So that's kind of where I met Avantika. And we worked together. And that, because you typically, when you're in part of a company, you're all working together and you have the pricing consultants. And no one's really scared to show you pricing, right, for NDA purposes because you're part of this company. When I became a consultant, you're kind of legally, you want to be kept out of the pricing. You don't want anything to do with that because, unfortunately, I could do my job right. You could screw up the pricing, you lose, but yet I'm still probably going to get blamed for it. So we try to keep a big gap, which is a huge all because, there's two sides of this coin. One, when I'm working with clients to figure out to go after something, and a lot of them are typically small to mid-sizes, all they see is a dollar value, and they get so wrapped up in wanting to win this work, they don't have a pricer. They don't have someone that can help them, explain them, you may want to go after this work or you may not want to because you're going to lose a ton of money. And that's really kind of what I respected from you since the minute I met you is before you even really started into pricing, you kind of showed people what it was going to be for them if they were to win it. Right. And sometimes you're not going to make anything or losing money. And then the other side of the coin is for proposals, you have your technical and your management, and then you have your pricing. what happens when your technical and your management are saying all these great things, and we're going to offer you the kitchen sink, and then your pricing is we're just going to probably give you a faucet, and maybe you might have some water every once in a while, right? And you can't be doing both because then it never syncs up, and that's such a problem during the proposal process. And then say you were to win it, you're screwed.
Right.
So it's a huge issue, and it's so important for that coordination.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think the best proposal management teams integrate the pricing and finance aspects with the rest of the volumes. And you hit it on you hit the nail on the head when you said we have to find a way to integrate the tech and the management volumes and the phase-ins and everything else that goes in a proposal with what the offer can sustain and whether it makes sense for the company as a strategy. We like to have the dialogue.
Yeah.
Sit down with the client, talk to them what their business needs are, where the strategy is, develop a coherent approach which integrates everything, not just how to write a proposal, but, all right, how are you going to execute? What are your liabilities? What are the risks you're teaming? I mean, your
teaming's a huge thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's where I find the biggest need, too. I hate when people say price to win. And I've hated that for forever. And pricing strategy is really the name of the game. And you've taught me that. But it's so true because especially if you're going after something large and you have subcontractors and you don't get that pricing conversation, operation conversation, LCAT conversation out of the way, and you don't have someone that can understand the right way of going about that, you're screwed.
I agree.
You're so screwed. It's so hard. And then, I mean, we've been a part of it where those conversations weren't had, and that effort towards the end of it, after all that time, just falls apart.
Yeah, because like you said, we want to be a solution to the client, right? We want to make sure that their dollar goes further because bids and proposals are a strategy function.
Yeah.
If they're investing time and money in it, where can we take them? Is it better to let them know a certain way at a certain time? You're doing this a different way, and it may not result in a success. And our approach, proposal team as a whole, is to optimize the success rate, right? I mean, we're not going to all win something, but let's focus their energies and directions, intervene early and often. Right?
No, and it's interesting what you said, how bid and proposals is a strategy. And I think for a long time it was looked at as an administrative process. And people look at pricing as a number plug-in. And is that changing? Yes. People look at proposals as a number plug-in. And funny story, there's people that are changing that thought, but still look at it that way. I was talking to a very, very large, well-known management consulting company the other day about their proposal process, and they verbatim told me that it was an administrative function to them. And people operate that way, but that's where you don't really get the bang for your buck.
Yeah.
You don't combine teams and you don't have a pricing person in those proposal meetings, in that war room with you, doing reviews with you.
Right.
I mean, because the strategy at the end of the day should be for the proposal manager to review the pricing narrative and then vice versa.
Make sure it tells the right story.
Yeah. I mean, because how many times have you been in a review where you're reading over the technical and you're like, we didn't come anywhere close to pricing this. Team timeout. It can be really, really good, but it can be a bad thing if there's no integration there.
I agree, and I think that's one of the industry best practices. I'm sure you're starting to see there's a need for it.
A huge need.
The capture team essentially has to involve, the pricing function.
Oh, yeah.
I think there has to be that dialogue and that partnership because capture is so critical and early capture is so critical because pricers can
these
help
days,
shape
yeah.
that.
No, you have to be able to get out in front of it and you have to understand what you're going after because you can look at these big opportunities, right, that are huge dollar signs. I mean, I know you and I can probably think of a few examples where we've sat in that war room where it's huge dollar signs. Companies are going crazy over it. It's all they can see. You go to price it and you're like, you're going to break even at best.
Right. I mean, I've had companies tell me when I've told them this is not going to make anything or you're losing a certain percentage, here's the negative 20%. And they're like, well, it's just percent, it's not dollars, right? So, there is that education that does happen when we go in, and the earlier the better, like you said, be kind of a team.
And there's always a reason to get in the door. Like, if you're going to lose money and it gets you in the door, there's always business risks and there's always handoffs. But when you're going after things, especially at the pace that this industry is moving now, and you don't have a pricing and or proposal department that is in constant communication and talking, and don't really understand the ebbs and the flows and what goes into that, like, and if you're bidding constantly, you're going to set yourself up to lose a lot of money.
Yeah. What are a couple of your best practices that you use in your management of proposals to bring in pricing early?
Well, I bring in you. Honestly, I think one of the first questions I ask, especially as a consultant now when I walk in the door, top 5 question I ask is, do you have pricing? Do you have a pricing strategist? And that's not for selling purposes. It's because I want to know who that person is. I want to know who they're working with. And if they don't, then obviously I say you need to call Avantika. I think the best practice is getting to know your points of contacts immediately and getting involved and getting integrated. That's your subcontracts, your contracts people, your technical, your pricers, your operations, anyone that needs to be involved in this discussion and making sure they're involved from the beginning, I think is the biggest, best practice I could say. And it doesn't matter the dollar value. It could be for a task order for 5 people. People still need to be involved.
Right.
And need to have that discussion because especially as the company gets larger that you're dealing with, things change constantly. Right. And I would say that, and then having the operations and pricing people. And I know this is painful because I've been through it, because proposals and operations are very different. Mm-hmm. Winning and then executing are very different. Mm-hmm. But having the pricing and operations people review your technical and your management and whatever else, and then vice versa, having the proposal people review the pricing, because you guys write very boring stuff. Mm-hmm. We can help make it better. You guys can help bring the really fun stuff down to being a little bit more realistic.
Right.
It's a good balance, and I think involving that from pink to red to the final review is probably the most important thing you should have in your best practice toolkit.
I completely agree. I think one of the things that you've hit on again is that cost volume shouldn't just be a document, which is about numbers. This
Very
is a story.
Boring document.
It's a sales document.
Such a boring document.
Exactly.
I hate price narratives.
I know. But you can jazz it up. You can make sure it's ghosting.
Yeah, you don't need to make it. Doesn't need to be boring. There can be win themes. There can be hot boxes. There can be feature benefits. You can spice it up a little bit.
Absolutely. And that's why I like working with proposal managers who actually like to be involved in writing and facilitating that. And they don't just give it to me and say, go, just submit it to me in Gold Team,
Yeah.
I need that dialogue.
Know what you're going to get.
Yeah, give me your story. Give me the voice. What is your introduction? What's the strength of your team? It should all go in the cost volume because it is a sales document.
It's a sales document. And I will tell you, and I have totally at fault for that, where I have not wanted to look at that price narrative and I just give it off, especially if I'm working with someone that I know.
Yeah.
I probably don't look at it as much as I should, but it is a sales document. The whole thing's a pitch in this industry where, you can say LPTA is no longer a thing. They can do whatever regulations that they want. Pricing is a thing.
Right.
And it's a big thing. And we should be more involved in making that document look more like a sales and a pitch.
Because it's part of your proposal, and I think it does a disservice to you as a proposal manager where you're running and making all these documents, compliant and telling the good story.
You guys don't get enough love.
Right? We just need some proposal love. But that was great. I think we've got a lot of dialogue and, the right focus and the start, at least with people like you in the industry. And I think we're headed in the right direction as we start working together a lot, proposals and pricing, teams together, because that's been missing in the past in the industry.
Totally.
And I think things are changing. So it's been great having you.
Thank you for having me.
And completing this great episode with you.
Thanks.
We'll love to have you back next year.
I will come back whenever you want me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Silo was good.